Welcome, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Vanessa. Well, my name is Khwaja, and I am Director of University Relations for Simple Ed. And I have had the experience of serving as a Deputy Registrar for a group of educational institutions in India. So I've had the opportunity of working on MOUs at that level as well, and also in Simple Ed. All right. So I think we could begin from here after the introductions. All right. So now, well, I would like to formally welcome all of you to Simple Ed's another interactive session, of course, in collaboration with Pearson. A very, very good morning to the people joining in from United States, and a very good evening for those joining in with us today from India. And as we all know, today's topic is best practices of drafting MOUs for international academic collaborations. And it kind of becomes especially relevant at this stage because India has recently come up with its framework document of the new National Education Policy 2020 after over 30 years. And it draws attention on internationalization and easing government norms on international academic collaborations. So that's why it kind of becomes all the more relevant. Can we move to the next slide, please? All right. Now, for all those who are attending this session of ours, uh, this is something that you will have access to. So this is our 28 pages handbook on MOU developments with Indian institutions. So it is a handy reference material on Indian higher education system, on international higher education system, on some types of collaborations, then on, and it also talks about some regulations. Of course, that has the India perspective. So it talks about the UGC regulations and AICT regulations. Of course, we need not forget that the new education policy that I was talking about, that's a framework document, and there are a lot of changes that are proposed, and hopefully those changes will be implemented very, very soon. All right. So, what is an MOU? Now, an MOU, or a memorandum of understanding, is typically an agreement, between two or even more entities or parties. Now, in our case, it is educational institutions. So it primarily expresses a convergence of will between these signing parties, and it indicates an intended, so to say, common line of action. So can we move to the next slide, please? All right. So here are some of the possible collaborations that can take place. Of course, there could be more, but these are the common ones that we see happening. So yes, there could be exchange. It could be faculty, student, or staff exchange. Then yes, something very, very common is study abroad. Students from US institutions going and studying in different places across the globe. Then another very interesting collaboration could be in the field of research. So some kind of joint research happening, some professors visiting or researchers visiting each other. Then student transfers could be of a variety of types, like some kind of articulation, some kind of hybrid programs, or some kind of 2+2 arrangements. So obviously that could also vary. Then at the same time, there could be some kind of joint or dual degree programs. Of course, there would be, as I mentioned, that the new education policy in India would definitely let institutions explore opportunities and ease. There is, in fact, also a proposal that a legislation would come out very soon, and a lot of ease would be provided for this. Then another important point could be of a branch campus, some kind of a strategic hub on the campus. So yeah, this is the current landscape, so to say. Then thank you for moving to the next slide. Then here is a link to a sample MoU that you can access, and this is an MoU that was signed by AIMST University Malaysia. So this, of course, it covers the basics. It's a simple document, but definitely it will give you an understanding of how an MoU kind of looks like. Right. So can I please now invite our director and co-founder Yasur Ansari to take up this presentation from here.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Hi again. Thank you, Khwaja. So,
All right.
our main goal of organizing this webinar was very simple. We wanted to give the attendees the tools and a few pointers so they can quickly create their own MOUs, regardless of what kind of program they're creating it for. So, one of the things that I wanted to share with the audience is that before even we start creating an MOU or an agreement or partnership, we need to keep in mind there are a few challenges that are unique to international agreements because of various different factors. So, I quickly want to point out what some of those factors could be so we are aware of them before even drafting an MOU for these purposes. So one of the things that is very sometimes overlooked is the privacy laws and how student records are maintained in different countries. So to give you a quick example, I have had my high school education in India, but I had had all of my higher education in United States. I also worked for a couple of US universities, and when I was working for universities, Chinese parents, Indian parents, they would often call and they would ask us to share the grades of the students with them. However, in United States, legally, I cannot share the grades with the parent, even though the parent is paying for the education, because the student has an expectation of privacy from the institution. And sometimes parents would get frustrated, but we have to follow the law, and those are the US laws. So while creating these documents, we have to make sure that we have basic understanding of privacy and what the university can or cannot do with the data that our students will share with that particular institution. The other thing is important, which is the law of the land. And as Khwaja was sharing, there has been a lot of talks about new regulations for Indian higher education, which is always welcome, making it more flexible. But we're not just talking about India, we're talking about the entire world. So it's very important to understand what regulations and rules govern these partnerships in whichever nation you are trying to create these partnerships in. Next thing, of course, sometimes people overlook are the cultural differences, because every country has a unique, diverse, and sometimes really old culture. So we need to be very sensitive towards that. And we, as international educators, need to make sure that we are trying to learn about these cultures before we try to go and engage with students, faculty, or staff of that particular nation. And trust me, it will really help you build that trust. And people will appreciate it a lot if you learn about their culture and you're sensitive towards that. And lastly, one unique challenge that any international collaboration presents is the language difference. And on top of that, there is a time difference. Like for this webinar, we're trying to bring people from across the world together. However, some of you are attending this at the night time. For me in California, it's like 8 a.m. right now. So this, however, with passion, we can overcome this. But this is definitely a very practical challenge when trying to work with people across the world. So the next thing that I want to talk about is pretty much from my experience. I've had the privilege of working with a lot of different universities. And one of the first thing that most of them share with me is that, oh, I've signed MOUs before and they just lie on the shelf and nothing happens. And this is a very, very common problem. So firstly, we need to be aware of what the motivation of our partner institution is. Are they signing an MOU to put it on their website and use it for PR, or is there an actual intent to execute the MOU? So one of the first things that I advise most of our partners to do is make sure there is a timeline and a deadline, and that is part of your MOU. An example of that could be the activities need to commence within 6 months, or this MOU is null and void. So this is just an example. You can use it whichever way you want. But I think it's very important that some kind of timeline, some kind of deadline is definitely addressed in these MOUs. The other pitfall that I see is that sometimes MOUs will not necessarily say what position is responsible for this particular program. So, for example, is it going to be the director of student services who is your contact person and responsible person? And trust me, until unless there is a person or a team that is responsible for that program most likely is not going to happen. Because someone needs to be in charge, someone needs to be responsible. I'm not talking about the person that's going to sign the MOU, because those are mostly senior ranking officers, but someone who is responsible for the day-to-day activities of that particular program. So until unless there is a person dedicated, it becomes very challenging to keep that program active. And lastly, financial terms, in my opinion, should be very, very clear, very, very transparent, and both parties should know what needs to happen with the fee or any other finances that are being collected from the students. And these are even more important when you're talking about 2+2 programs or joint programs. Who will collect the money? How will money be transferred? What kind of taxes will be put on those kind of financials? Is the money going to be wired? Will it be wired monthly, semester wise? So all of these things are important factors and could lead to conflicts if not really, made clear at the very, very beginning. And here are a few other terms that I think are important to keep in mind. Curriculum, of course, is really important. And this is something that our faculty needs to kind of address while designing any kind of agreement. And I think this is something that we all are pretty familiar with. But there's another concept in some nations of subcontracting. I believe that is something that needs to be put in the MOU as well. If you're not comfortable with subcontracting, you need to make sure that your MOU is being executed by full-time faculty members of the institution that you're getting into a partnership with, and not someone that project has been outsourced to, or a third party, depending on whatever your needs are. Of course, evaluation and course credits, what kind of credits will student earns, where will that credit be transferable? So all of that definitely needs to go in the MOU. Quality control is another big issue that sometimes get overlooked. There needs to be a system, there needs to be a reasonable mechanism to monitor the administrative and the academic aspect of the program, that both institutions can kind of get together time to time and see how they're doing on those quality measures. Because it's extremely important that we make sure that students are getting the quality education, and that is the whole purpose of doing these partnerships, to increasing the quality of our programs. And lastly, student accommodation. Once again, I think it's important to put things about accommodation, because there are many things that are different from country to country. Because as I have put in these slides, fire extinguishers, smoke detectors, locks, are these something standard in student housing in India or in Nigeria or in some other country? If they are not, would you want your students to have all of these in their housing? So these are things that needs to be discussed and I think addressed in the MOU, if that is important to your institution and your students. And before I hand over the floor to Vanessa, I would like to just point out a few other important terms that I believe we can look at. And if that is important to you or important to the program, these can be put in the MOU, or at least discussed and thought about. Financial terms, intellectual property, that is something that sometimes people often miss, especially if it's a research program, if it's something like that. It's very important that we kind of make sure that will you share the ownership of that intellectual property? Will it go to the student? Whatever your policies are, I think it's important that we share it with the partners. Subcontracting, I've already spoken about. Orientations, will there be a pre-departure orientation? Will there be an orientation once the student gets to your host institution? So those are things that we need to really keep in mind. Once again, I'll go back to the example of me being a university professional in the United States. Here on campus, we have student services professionals specially dedicated to international students. Then there are counselors, psychiatrists, all these facilities are available on campus. So when your student goes to another country, will they have those kind of facilities available, and how will their mental and physical health be ensured? So these are things that I think are important and we need to really talk about. And lastly, I would talk about anti-bribery. There is something that we can put on there about that, especially depending on the climate of the country that you are developing those partnerships in. So this is my very last slide. Ethics in marketing. I think this is something important, and this is something that we definitely need to talk about, no matter how uncomfortable this might be, because I've seen institutions do that. So if you go to institutions' website, you will see some of them boast of having maybe like 100 MOUs, and these are our partners. What does a partner mean? How are they going to use this partnership or this MOU in their PR and marketing? Those things are very important, because sometimes students could be misled, sometimes there could be misrepresentation, sometimes things could be very exaggerated that it kind of becomes unethical. So we need to be very aware of these things, and the best way to be counter these things is make sure that from the very beginning you are talking about these things and you're putting them in writing in the MOU. So now I would like to invite Khwaja, who is going to kind of address a few questions to Vanessa, and we can go from there. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Yasir. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Vanessa and Rade as our expert speaker today. Vanessa, I would like to address these questions to you, and you could then maybe explore and share your experience on MOU development. So, primarily, we want to know what are the challenges in drafting MOUs. Then, what are the important points that one needs to keep in mind? And if there are some best practices that you could shed some light on, that would be wonderful. And of course, if there are any rules that you want to bring in, we would be happy to kind of know that. So the floor is yours now.
Thank you so very much for having me. First of all, I points that both of you brought during the panel so far has been really spot on. Drafting MOUs, it's, in my humble opinion, it's not the hardest part. The hardest part is finding the right partner and finding the right partner that has common goals in the development and execution of the MOU. And I think Yasser brought a very important point about the execution, ensuring that those memo of understandings, they are actually relevant to our students, to our faculty, to university overall international goals and internationalization of campus on both ends. And ensuring it doesn't sit in a drawer or it doesn't sit in a website, just listing that, yes, these are my partners and I have an MOU with them, and so on and so forth. So I think that's the hardest piece. It's literally finding the right partner and finding the right collaboration that you want to do to develop your MOU. But once you do that, and at CSUN at least, we take it very seriously, and we have a very clear path for MOU development and goals, and what we share with our partners or potential partners. One of the key aspects is the responsible person on campus. So we do not even start engaging with any MOU unless the MOU is approved by a dean, an academic dean from one of our academic colleges. What does it do by having that approval? It means that that academic department is on board with the MOU. So they believe that for their program, their academic development, or whatever they are doing, it's relevant. So by having the dean sign off on it and says, yes, it's okay with me, go ahead and do it, it gives validation of that MOU. And then another thing that we require on campus before we even start getting there is we require a faculty, we call it a faculty champion on campus, but pretty much it goes back to what Yasser said, which is the person on campus responsible for ensuring this MOU is being executed. And that faculty champion will be the person dealing with the student orientation, along with the whole team on campus. So there's offices and support offices that handle international overall, but that faculty champion will handle that specific MOU and what that is entitled of doing. And then there is the senior international office who ensures that it's all in compliance and it's within the time frame that the MOU needs to be executed. So all of our MOUs are either 3 or 5 years. Most of them, we're trying to push them to 5 years now. And they have a time limit. They have an expiration date. And throughout this 5 years, we monitor all the activities. And before we submit it for renewal, when the faculty champion or the MOU is about to expire, we ask, as the senior international office, so what has happened with this MOU? What are the activities you have done in order to entertain a possible renewal or not? So those are probably more of the challenges when it comes to that. Now, for us as well, we have to take several steps in order to get approvals. So we have an internal approval routing sheet. All of our MOUs are only signed by our university president. She's the only one authorized to sign any type of MOU. And she will only sign it when it goes through all the routing signature approval process that is started by the senior international office, and it goes all the way to department chairs and deans and provosts, and very important, legal, academics, finance, procurement, especially if it's an international agreement that involves, for example, like a campus overseas or some sort of activities that involves a contract and financial exchange. Risk management management is becoming one of the key aspects recently, and especially now with COVID in the signature process. So there's a lot of departments that weigh on this. So our approach was to create templates to make that easier. So at CSUN, we have basically 3 different basic templates of MOUs for international collaboration. We always start what we call with a friendship MOU, which we shake hands. There is no financial implication. Allocation of time and academics is minimum, but it's literally saying we are engaging this to explore activities that can vary from curriculum exchange, faculty exchange, student abroad. We're just learning more about each other. And I think that's actually a great way to approach, because it opens many doors. And then we have a template for curricular exchange. And those are the ones who involve 2+2s, 3+2s, transfer articulation agreements, English programs with a 2+2. So it's a variation of anything that has to do with curriculum. And then we have the exchange agreement templates, and that involves any type of study abroad, student exchange, faculty-led groups, faculty exchange, dual research, anything that has to do with exchange. So we do have clearly those 3 templates, and those 3 templates were pre-approved by the Chancellor's office and by our campus legal team. So that makes it a little bit easier to process and move along the MOU through the pipeline. nowadays, a lot of involvement on MOUs is being done also through collaborative online virtual exchange. So that's something else that it's very relevant, and we all should be looking at on how to enhance our international collaborations by virtual exchange. And that is also could be part of the curriculum, or could be done through, in our case, our initial friendship MOU exchange. To end, we also have a website who is very transparent with us. On our main CSUN website, we have a page called All Things International. And on that page, which is updated by our office, the Senior International Office, we have templates listed, we have agreements listed, we have the processes and procedures for establishing an MOU with CSUN, and we have a list of current active MOU international partners in a variety of different MOU exchanges. So I don't know if that helps, but this is my 2 cents.
All right. So thank you so much, Vanessa. And as I mentioned in the chat box also, you are welcome to write in your questions and we'll be happy to take them.
Can I share my screen by any chance or not?
Yes, yes, you have the option of sharing your screen.
So let me try to see something here. Just to maybe I don't know if you can see. No, probably.
Not yet.
Give me 1 second. There you go. Share. Can you see now?
Not yet.
Vanessa, if you can you hear me?
It says yes, it says sharing this tab to webinar.getresponse.com. Should I just?
Yes, you need to click OK.
It's not saying okay, just saying stop. No. Interesting. I was just trying to share the website. What?
The fourth icon on the left-hand side, the fourth icon from the top, if there's a menu on the left-hand side, it's the fourth one says screen sharing. If you click on that, that should allow you to screen share.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying. And then it says I'm clicking on the page, and it's not showing for you guys, because for me it's showing sharing.
Right. Yeah, we can see it. We can see it now.
You can see it?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
So this is what I was mentioning, which it could be a good resource for especially those of you who are starting with it. But this is our main CSUN webpage, www.csun.edu. And then we have the All Things International page, which shows our active, inactive international agreements, all friendship, curricular exchange, a description about what we consider international agreements, and what I meant about the friendship template, and what we require, and why we say make friends first, and then the compliance with the MOU, approvals, and the routing, and simple and basic templates and principles for developing the faculty or student exchange, and the ones that include curricular exchange. So that, could potentially be a resource for you. Feel free to look into that. Again, it's
I would just like to share that after the webinar, we would share the recording of the webinar, and we would include this link for all the members, so you can go ahead and check out the website on your own. And I do see there are the MOU templates on this website as well. So those will be very, very helpful. Thank you so much, Vanessa, for sharing that. There are a couple of questions for you in the chat box, so I would like you to kindly address them. There's a question from Mr. Dhananjay. He's asking, what is the best time of the year to do a faculty or student exchange in United States? And what is the minimum and the maximum duration that they can stay on an exchange program?
It's a great question, and there is not one single answer to that question. I would say if you're looking for the students from, for example, overseas to come to the US, usually good times and that happen, there's a study abroad for short period of time. If they are here like for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, it's usually during the summer break, because there is more housing options on campus, and there are more opportunities to engage on separate focus programming for them. If it is, which is the most common, the semester or the year abroad, and then it's usually only possible when the semester or the year starts. So it's usually either end of January to end of May, or end of August to middle of December. So they can do either the fall or the spring study abroad semester. Often there are other specifically faculty-led programs or faculty collaboration exchanges that may happen during spring break, which is around March, or it may happen, we've had groups coming in September for 2 weeks, we've had groups coming in April for 2 weeks, where it could be a combination of classes they attend, activities they do on campus, and sometimes, company visits and engagement with the region. So there is no set answer, and there is it really depends on the agreement that you have with the faculty that is handling that and what the goal is. Does that answer?
Thank you, Vanessa. The next question is there a possibility of doing a semester abroad program with the project alone, taking no classes? I think that's what they mean by no more courses registered.
For like going abroad like as a student and just doing 6 months overseas without any attachment to coursework, that is going to be hard, because there is no visa currently that would allow that. At least on our campus, there's no way for them to come without having any academic credits attached to their program. Somehow it has to be.
That we work with, some of them have internship programs abroad. So the students go and do internship and they get credit for that, but they do not take classes. Sometimes they have a class that is online that they have to take, and that class is kind of tied in with the things that they're learning at their internship. So that's one way that I've seen some institutions do it. But I think when I was saying, I agree with that.
Usually, if those institutions do that, they are not doing it by themselves. They are partnering with a third party who does have those type of internship programs. So usually the institutions themselves alone, from my understanding, they won't be able to host the student for 6 months just based on an internship program. They have to be attached to certain visa, either J1 or an F1 or some kind of visa. But it is possible, as Yasser said, that there are programs and providers out there that do this type of activity, and then the students could come through those providers who then partner with a university. I don't know if making sense, but
sure. I think the next question is just to clarify what summer is for United States. Is it May to August? That's the question.
Can I have the question again?
Sure. The question is, what are the summer months in United States?
Usually it starts in June. It's June, July. Yeah, it's usually for university campuses, the majority of them would be June, July, and until like middle of August, or sometimes towards the end of August. So that's what's considered summer here.
Okay. The next question is, how can Indian institutions become a potential partner for US institutions, or what are the things that US institutions are looking in institutions while trying to partner in India?
I think it's a common goal. I mean, what do they have in common? What is the Indian institution looking forward to a partner in the US? Do they want a partner in US to help them with some curricular exchange? Do they want to develop a partnership for potentially a 2+2 or 2+3? Do they want to do study abroad, which could be done without even the exchange? It could be done on a way that it's a very common program we have a fee-paying study abroad where we develop partnerships with institutions, but there is no reciprocity, because sometimes the US students do not necessarily want to go abroad to that Indian institution at this time, because maybe there is not enough resources yet on campus. So the Indian student could come to the US on a fee-paying study abroad for 6 months, and then once that department or international department at the Indian institution is developed, and then you can start the reciprocity. It could be done with a faculty exploration of dual research. I mean, it really depends. And I think the beginning question is, what are the common goals? I mean, what programs or what interests does the Indian institution have on that specific US institution, and vice versa? And then start the conversation.
Important to ask. I think this is one of the last questions that we will take. If Vanessa, you could quickly tell us, how does an exchange program work? That is the question. So maybe just explain a little bit how a traditional exchange program works.
It has two ways of working. So a student exchange program can work basically on the interest of the internationalization on both campuses. So let's say an Indian institution wants to develop a partnership with a US institution. So their students are able to go and study abroad for 6 months, and whatever academic credit courses that they've taken and that institution overseas will count back home as credits. So the students will not lose 6 months. They would, the academic credit courses that were taken will be validated when they come back home, and vice versa. This could be done by using those academic credit courses on classes that they would be taking in India, and then they come to the US. So let's say if they are a civil engineering or computer science student, they would take classes only in this department. But more than often, it opens up a little bit the options to the students, and they can take classes in business, they can take classes in communication, they can expand their horizons, and then the transfer credits come back and get validated as extra credits, as international credits. I mean, it depends on how the universities want to look at it. But this is actually a very great way to start internationalizing the campus and growing the interest of those students without the students needing to do the investment of the full 4 years overseas, right? I mean, you students on your campus and you allow them to go overseas, and many institutions nowadays are requiring that as one of the steps for you to be able to graduate as an undergraduate student. If you don't have any study abroad experience, you won't be able to graduate. So it's shifting as well what the world is seeing in terms of requirements for graduation.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa, for that answer. We'll just take one more question because we haven't really talked about this, and I know we are running out of time. So after this, we would conclude this session. I know some of you have reported that there are some audio issues on your end. Please don't worry. We will send you the recording of this webinar, so hopefully you can listen to this through that. The last question is, Vanessa, about funding. faculty exchange or visiting faculty. So the question is there any possibility for faculty exchange from India for short
Yes,
term?
of course.
And if,
I mean, anything is possible. It really depends on what's the purpose of the faculty exchange and the visiting scholar. We call it a visiting scholar program. Is it and who on campus is your faculty champion? So it will really have to start with who is the faculty on campus that is your counterpart that will be hosting you. So you need to have a department on campus and a faculty on campus that will be considered your hosts. And then it goes through a process on a J1 visa that is done by our visiting scholars office. So yes, it is possible. It's not a super simple process, but it's a possible process. And again, it starts with the main purpose and who is your friend on campus.
Khwaja, it was great having you. And if you still have more questions, please email them to us. Our email address is india@simpleed.org. We also shared our web address for the documents that you can download. They are available at simpleed.org/blog. Once again, we'll share all of these links in a follow-up email that we will send you along with the recording of this webinar. Once again, if you need any help, you have any questions, feel free to email them to us, WhatsApp them to us, and we'll try to get you in touch with the right people who can address those questions. Khwaja, do you have anything to add?
Well, yes, thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. And thank you, Vanessa and Yasser. And thank you, everyone who has been attending this.
Thank you all. Be safe, be healthy, and to a brighter future ahead of us.
All right. Thank you so much, Vanessa.
One last thing before we end. There are some Pearson vouchers that we will be sharing with the attendees.
Ooh.
Okay. We have some free scored from Pearson, and if you need them for your students, feel free to email them to us and we can get to them. So we have partnered with Pearson for our webinar series. Right. We do them every other Wednesdays, and so far it's been going really good. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you, especially Vanessa, because I know you had a very busy morning and you took out time for us. Thank you, Khwaja, for moderating. Thank you to all the audience members.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.